Hi everyone, especially the people of LGBT. In today's video, I explain the story of how I figured out the different types of sexual orientation and how they had broadened my horizons, whether they'd be like media I came across or any answers I found. Uh, well, before I continue with this, I would like to mention that what I'm about to mention isn't intended to look down on anyone based on their sexual orientation, but explain of how I found out about the LGBT representation and how it broadened my horizons. Way back when I was in second grade, a couple of boys have asked me, like, if I was gay. Of course, you wouldn't believe what sort of answer I told them. That's just it. I didn't give them an answer because, like, I was 7 years old and I didn't know what the term gay meant. When I got older, I looked up the term gay, and aside from from one definition describing the term as happy or cheerful, it also refers to like someone who is a homosexual. In many cases, it refers to a homosexual man. Of course, while it can be said like a woman with a coming out story may label herself as gay, I mean a proper term of addressing a homosexual woman is a lesbian. But before I continue, I would like to before anyone jumps to conclusions, I would like to mention that I would like to establish that I'm not, nor have I ever been, a person of LGBT. I mean, there was a time where I didn't even know what the term such a thing as LGBT existed when I was growing up. I mean, I came across the terms heterosexual and homosexual at one point, but I don't remember when exactly I came across them, nor do I remember when I figured out the definitions of the terms. All I know is that the definitions are opposites. I mean, heterosexual means like someone who is attracted to someone who's the opposite gender, whereas homosexual refers to like someone who is attracted to the same gender as they are. Interestingly enough, there was a time where I didn't even know what the term bisexual meant. Of course, like someone told me that it means like someone who's attracted to both genders. When I was a freshman in high school, I remember learning about the terms homogeneous and heterogeneous, like in my freshman science class, but I don't know if it's where I picked up on the terms heterosexual and homosexual. I mean, also around my freshman year, I also grew fond of a show called The Big Bang Theory, and there was a recurring character named Beverly Hofstadter who thinks that two main characters named Raj and Howard were in a homosexual relationship, which I got confused about. Of course, what you have to understand is that both Raj and Howard are straight. The former is with Bernadette, the latter has dated like numerous women and can be quite nervous around them, like mainly in the first half of the series. Interestingly enough, one woman they have in common is Bernadette. There was one episode where Raj was about to kiss Bernadette, but Howard comes between them, causing an accidental lip lock between him and Raj. I remember turning away from it because it was weird. I mean, no offense to anyone. Another episode had Raj making frequent fantasies about like being with Bernadette. Like one of them involved a dance number. And when the dance number ended, Raj responds, "Dance number aside, I'm so not gay." Also, I saw one of like Jeff Dunham's ventriloquist shows on Comedy Central called Jeff Dunham's Controlled Chaos, like during my freshman high school as well. Jeff brings out like a new puppet named Ahmed Jr., like the son of one of his frequently used puppets named Ahmed. There were a couple parts where Ahmed's leg dangles off a podium he was sitting on and has to call for someone named Marnell, like for help and like for assistance, and until like eventually getting duct tape for it. I mean, through all of this, Ahmed Jr. was commenting on how cute Marnell was, and I'm not gonna lie, I was very surprised and confused about it. Of course, when I was in college, I watched a movie called Dumb and Dumber 2, and I came across a movie line where a man took like 34 years to come out of the closet. I mean, when I first heard that movie line, I was thinking to myself, what does that even mean? Did he spend most of his life trapped in a closet? I mean, here I was thinking like he was trapped in an actual closet. I mean, like 3 years after I saw the movie, I came across the phrase "come out of the closet," and I was curious enough to look up what it means, and I found out that it refers to like people of LGBT coming out with their sexuality. I was also trying to figure out like where I've heard that phrase before. I mean, sure enough, I remember the Dumb and Dumber 2 movie, and the part where the phrase came up to where I thought differently, to where I said to myself, man, how I took the phrase way too literally. I mean, about a year ago, I posted a video like where I describe the story of the phrase in a little less detail, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a link in the description. Before I continue some other media with LGBT representation, I would like to mention a catch with LGBT. One time I asked my mom on her opinion on homosexuality, and she told me it was a sin, mainly because God intended marriage between one man and one woman in order for the species to reproduce. Of course, those of you who are curious, my mom raised me religious because she herself is religious. I mean, through all of this, I won't tell anyone like who they should and shouldn't be as people, nor am I going to pretend I'm an expert in my own religion. I would like to tell you what I do know or what I found out. However, I do believe God has a plan for all of us and loves us irrespective of who we are. And now I will proceed to tell you some LGBT representation, mostly with LGBT couples. To start this off, I would like to talk about one of my favorite cartoons called Steven Universe. When my younger brother and I started watching it, I never thought there would be any LGBT characters in it until I came across two characters named Ruby and Sapphire. For all of you Steven Universe fans out there, who could ever forget the time that Steven rescued the two gems from jail cells on Peridot's ship, only to find out that they're fusion components of Garnet, even more so that Garnet's a romantic relationship between the gems. Of course, when I first saw the episode of Garnet actually being a fusion, I saw Steven rescue the first gem named Ruby, who desperately tries to find Sapphire after being freed. And I can't shake the feeling that her gemstone placement, pertaining to her left hand, was familiar somehow. When she reunites with Sapphire, they fuse into Garnet. It had me by surprise, but it did explain why Ruby was so familiar. More so on the fact I must have missed the fact that Garnet was a romantic relationship between the gems, and how I ended up figuring that out was when I looked up Ruby and Sapphire in Steven Universe Wikipedia. When I browsed through the articles, I noticed that their pronouns being she and her. Not to mention that they're in a relationship. They're in a relationship with each other. I got confused about it to the point where I was thinking, which one of them is actually a boy? Even though that the gems don't have specific the gem characters don't have specific genders, I say they're female because of their pronouns. Nevertheless, I've started thinking there was more to love and sexuality that meets the eye. Although I didn't come across a whole lot of different sexualities or LGBT representation at first. Up next is another cartoon called Adventure Time, and two LGBT characters in the show are Princess Bubblegum and Marceline the Vampire Queen. I will tell you the romantic relationship between them was something I didn't quite expect. When I first watched Adventure Time, I thought it would be more like an original cartoon version of the Super Mario Bros. Video game franchise. I had no idea that there'd be LGBT representation until I watched some Princess Bubblegum and Marceline scenes and got deep into it. When I first saw the couple episodes of the two in the early seasons, I thought they were like rivals who turned into best friends. When I came across the Stakes Halloween arc, I noticed a more romantic bond between them. There was one episode where Princess Bubblegum brings Marceline to her castle after being poisoned, and where the former responds, "I wish I could have done more for her." I thought to myself, do you have a crush on her now, Princess Bubblegum? The reason why I had that thought was, it was the kind of sentence that people would tell about a loved one. It wasn't until the series finale that I saw them share their first on-screen kiss. In the summer of 2017, my younger brother introduced me to an anime called Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. At first glance, I thought a dragon woman named Tohru was in love with a boy wearing glasses. To my surprise, my younger brother told me that the boy was actually a girl, and her name was Miss Kobayashi, hence the title. To pile on the surprise, another female dragon named Kanna, who is young, goes to elementary school and meets a young human girl named Riko Saikawa. Initially, Riko Saikawa starts off being Kanna's rival, but when the latter wanted to be friends, the two started to bond. However, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Not long into this, we see Riko Saikawa developing a crush on Kanna, as she would shriek with joy and blush whenever Kanna touches her, and vice versa. Originally I thought Riko Saikawa was cheerful in finding a friend in Kanna, but I should have guessed it was a crush, considering the background would turn pink and hearts would surround Riko Saikawa every other turn. However, while it would have been cool to see a human dragon hybrid in the anime at one point, I got used to the idea of LGBT. Even though it comes around when I least expect it. After all, different folks have different strokes, right? At one point, I didn't see anything involving the Pitch Perfect movies, even though I've heard of the movies, and until I saw a video where they do an a cappella version of a Britney Spears song called Toxic. To change the subject of what I said a little bit, I came across another video about two characters named Becca and Chloe. What the video featured was all the Chloe, aka their ship name moments, from the three movies. Upon watching it, like I asked in the comment sections if they were lesbians or bisexual. I mean, the reason why I ended up asking that question was, given to how close they were in a few scenes, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to a relationship than a platonic one. While other commenters have told me that the characters were straight, they've also told me that there was a kiss scene, like a Chloe kiss scene in the third movie that got scrapped for whatever reason. Not to mention that one of the commenters said that Becca would initiate the first kiss, but from where I was looking at in the video, in the video I mentioned earlier, it felt to me that Chloe would initiate the first kiss. I mean, nevertheless, with the Chloe kiss being scrapped, the relationship was basically platonic, as the other commenters have told me. Next up is a Fox TV show called Glee. Those of you who watched Glee and are huge fans of it, you've probably picked up on the LGBT representation in it, whereas I didn't. I mean, what I mean is, I've only seen a couple episodes of it during my freshman year in high school, and I had no idea that there were any LGBT characters in it until I came across a few videos about it. I mean, what I found was that there was a lesbian couple, Brittany and Santana, although the former is bisexual and the latter is a lesbian, and a gay couple, Kurt and Blaine. From my understanding, both LGBT couples are like the most prominent couples of the musical TV show, and with their coming out stories, being in romantic relationships, breaking up, and being back together again. What I also found out that was something else was a shared wedding between the couples, in a video I saw. And in fact, when I first saw the wedding, I thought to myself, a gay wedding happening the same time as a lesbian wedding? What in a way? In 2019, I became familiar with a Netflix movie called The Perfection. However, I didn't see the full movie, only clips of it on YouTube. One thing I will tell you that gave me great confusion was the LGBT representation in it. I first came across in a video where two women named Charlotte and Lizzie share a kiss. I asked in the comment sections, okay, you saw the LGBT makeout scenes in this video too, right? I wasn't the only one? I mean, I also added in on why I would ask that question, and I'm kind of paraphrasing by adding a few details on what I wrote. I found a couple articles and saw a video about the movie saying that the perfection literally made audiences sick. I mean, I had no idea that those two women in the movie were lesbians. I mean, to pile on, Lizzie's portraying actress is named Logan Browning, and I had no idea that the name Logan Browning was the name Logan was a unisex name. I mean, of course, there was one scene where the two women get to know each other, and Lizzie asked Charlotte, "Have you ever been with a woman before?" Only the latter replies that she's never been with anyone before, let alone someone the same gender as she is, mainly because she's been taking care of her mother during most of her life. I mean, when Lizzie comes to the conclusion that she's the first, Charlotte replies, "First and best." When I first saw that scene in a video on YouTube, I asked in the comment sections, does anyone else see a Get Out reference in this? Well, during the coronavirus pandemic, I became familiar with a TV show on the Freeform channel called Motherland Fort Salem. How I became familiar with the show was when my dad was watching the wedding episode called Bellwether Season. I remember being in and out of my bedroom during most of the episode, while taking clips at the TV, but I came across some LGBT representation upon doing so. How it happened was I saw two women getting cozy on the dance floor, and even sharing a kiss in a flashback sequence. In the same episode, of course. And I mean, I did have some idea of what was going on, but I was curious enough to ask my dad, are those two women more than friends? I mean, even though I would establish every now and again that LGBT representation would often catch me by surprise, it was, however, no surprise to me that my dad answered yes to my question. Of course, those of you who are curious, the two women's names are Raelle and Scylla Ramshorn. I mean, what confirmed it even further was when they were dancing, Scylla whispers in Raelle's ear, "No matter what happens, I love you." Since I've spent the last about 15 minutes talking about my LGBT my story about LGBT related romance and how I came across it, I I want to mention that homosexuality involves love, similar to that of heterosexuality. In fact, one of the few things I can tell you about love is, while it's the most powerful emotion, it's also a complex one. What I mean is, like, both in real life and in television, people can't control who or what they fall for, and I stipulate to that entirely. I mean, we not only see people in couples being heterosexual, but other sexual orientation as well, like whether they be homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, or anything else, given to what we come across. I mean, through all of this, many of you may think that I'm young for not fully understanding the different types of sexual orientation, but I feel many of us can be none the wiser of many things that are complex, like irrespective of age. I mean, take kids for example. Like, one thing they don't understand is, like, how babies are made or where they came from. I mean, which is why they ask their parents that question. On a show called America's Funniest Home Videos, there would be some gender reveal videos and ultrasound videos and they would often have little kids present. One video I saw had a little girl, a mother showing her daughter the baby on an ultrasound, and where the little girl exclaims, "You ate the baby!" Well, another video had a boy about the age of a toddler, or maybe older than a toddler, being allowed to poke a black balloon filled with pink or blue confetti, like to see if he's going to have a baby brother or a baby sister. Of course, blue confetti if it's a boy, pink confetti if it's a girl. Of course, when the little boy pops the balloon, pink confetti comes out and rains onto the carpet. When everyone, including the boy's parents, cheered that he's going to have a baby sister, the little boy studies the confetti on the carpet, and then he asks, "Where's the baby?" Kind of based on this, kind of like where babies come from, sexual orientation is like one of those science experiments or magic tricks that kids are way too young to comprehend. At least that's how it was with me when I was little. I mean, back when I was growing up, there'd be times where I would watch something on TV and someone would disguise themselves as the opposite gender, in order to do something, only to get romantically pursued by a suitor. Only the suitor doesn't realize that their love interest is basically someone the same gender as they are. Of course, when the guy's love interest reveals their true gender identity, not only the suitor's reactions are priceless, but they realize they fall in love with the wrong person. But I'm telling you, things have changed since I was growing up. I mean, in fact, the more media that I've come across and mentioned had broadened my horizons on the different types of sexual orientation, the more times I come across it. Well, putting my story aside for a moment, I would like to talk about more of homosexual and heterosexual couples. I mean, other than the definitions of the terms are really no different. I mean, when you think about it, homosexual couples go through a falling in love process, being in a relationship with each other, facing heartbreak, and even having a happy ending similar to that of heterosexual couples, whether they be in real life or in television. I mean, based on what I just mentioned, many homosexual couples face hurdles in their relationships similar to heterosexual couples. I mean, as we all know, perfect couples don't exist. I mean, up next, for the media I mentioned, I'm going to talk about the hurdles the LGBT couples have faced in their relationships, specifically the couples from Steven Universe, Adventure Time, The Perfection, and Motherland Fort Salem. For Steven Universe, the titular character mentions that Garner's fusion components, Ruby and Sapphire, are so close that they can't stand to be apart. I mean, being a fusion of the two gems, Garner faces her own hurdles, trying to keep herself together at all costs. However, Ruby and Sapphire face hurdles in the relationship when they're not fused as Garnet. In a season 2 episode, called Keystone Motel, Ruby and Sapphire split from fusion, because they were in a disagreement about Pearl tricking them as Garnet into fusing. I mean, while the couple made up at the end of the episode, it's not the hurdle that topped all the hurdles in the series that I plan to talk about. The hurdle I plan to talk about is what happened during the Heart of the Crystal Gems arc in the 5th season. Basically, it begins at the first episode of the arc, where everyone, including Garnet, aka Ruby and Sapphire, find out that Rose Quartz, the former leader of the Crystal Gems, was Pink Diamond from the Great Diamond Authority. Garnet splits into Ruby and Sapphire when the truth is out, but Sapphire was extremely furious about it. Ruby tries to calm her down, but Sapphire lashes out at her and thinks that the relationship was based on a lie. As Ruby weeps, Stephen and Pearl find Sapphire at Rose's fountain that's been frozen as a result of her powers. Pearl explains the story to Sapphire, as well as Stephen, the story of how Rose Quartz became the leader of the Crystal Gems, who not only fought for Earth, but fought for gems in need of freedom, like Garnet. After realizing that Rose Quartz's deception was a huge misunderstanding, Sapphire runs back to the temple with Stephen and Pearl accompanying her to try and apologize to Ruby, leading to the subsequent episode. However, they find the temple very dark, and there was a note from Ruby. Sapphire reads it and finds that Ruby had decided to run away. Realizing the damage she's caused to her partner, Sapphire begins to cry and tearfully responds, "Oh, Ruby, I'm so sorry. You left before I could take back all the horrible things I said to you." On top of all this, she fears Ruby may never return. Of course, Amethyst reveals that she gave Ruby a pen and paper a while ago, and she and Stephen end up going searching all over town to find Ruby. They eventually find her, and she's decided to go on a cowboy adventure in the subsequent episode. Through the whole time she's been on a cowboy adventure with Amethyst, Stephen, and Greg tagging along, Ruby reveals that she missed Sapphire and wishes that she could have been there to experience it with her. Stephen gives Ruby the grand suggestion, to make the relationship different than before, and they head back to the temple. Sapphire runs out to Ruby and apologizes for her behavior, but Ruby tells her that she was right about it, about what she said, and asks her to marry her. Of course, Sapphire accepts it. 2 episodes later, everyone, including a long-lost Crystal Gems member named Bismuth, attended Ruby and Sapphire's wedding. After the vows and ring exchange, Stephen pronounces them as Garnet, and they kiss and fuse again. Of course, it was from where I understand it, was like the first time the two have kissed on the lips. Back where I mentioned Princess Bubblegum and Marceline from Adventure Time, I'd mentioned that I viewed them as rivals who turn into best friends. What you have to understand is, there was one episode, where they were trying to open a door that has their most treasured possessions in it, only through music, only they spent most of the time arguing about it. Once they succeeded in opening the door, Marceline realized that Princess Bubblegum had kept a t-shirt that she gave her a long time ago. Since then, they've been hanging out more. A couple seasons later, there was another episode where they hang out again, only we realized that they've had a romantic relationship. What made the relationship turn sour was, Princess Bubblegum had too many responsibilities at the Candy Kingdom, causing her to push Marceline away. This caused the relationship, to be strained for a while. In the series finale, after saving Princess Bubblegum's life, Marceline confesses to her that she was afraid that something bad would happen to her and would fail to protect her due to the fact that they weren't talking, and doesn't want to lose her anymore. Of course, Princess Bubblegum assures her she's fine, and then they share a kiss. For the Netflix movie The Perfection, people would come across a synopsis saying it's about 2 cello-playing women who go through a sinister path with terrible consequences. Many of us reading the synopsis may think it's a hurdle in itself, which in many cases it is. Where the synopsis kicks in is where Lizzie gets sick and finds creepy Carly's on her arm, and ends up injuring herself. However, it's revealed that Charlotte gave Lizzie some supplements and manipulated her into injuring herself, as the creepy crawlies weren't real. With Charlotte being an amateur cello player due to taking care of her mom, and Lizzie being an expert cello player due to singing in school, many of us as the audience, are led to believe that Charlotte constructed it out of jealousy, which in actuality she was trying to protect Lizzie from their teacher Anton and the place where they learned to play the cello, as neither of which are who or what they appear to be. There was an impassioned line where Charlotte tells Lizzie, "The next time you need Anton the most, he will not be there he will not be there for you, I promise you that. But I will be. I will be there. I promise." Of course, get this, I can see to the fact that it's deep. After taking Charlotte's words to heart, Lizzie plots with her to get revenge on the people that did them harm. I mean, like during the revenge plan, Charlotte gets injured, but Lizzie manages to take down Anton. At the end of the movie, Charlotte and Lizzie play one cello together, and Anton is doomed to only listen to their music. I mean, as for Motherland Fort Salem, upon figuring out that Raelle and Scylla are more than friends, I decided to give the show a chance. I mean, I got flabbergasted by the relationship that I didn't realize they'd be separated during an attack on the wedding. I mean, to pile on, when I watched more Motherland Fort Salem, I began noticing that Raelle and Scylla were like the Ruby and Sapphire of the live-action TV universe. I mean, although what you have to understand is Raelle is a fixer at Fort Salem, whereas Scylla is a necro at Fort Salem, and is also like an agent for a terrorist group called the Spree. Interestingly enough, the Spree had assigned Scylla to lure Raelle to them, but they both developed deep feelings for each other. I mean, to bring out a few comparisons between Ruby and Sapphire and Raelle and Scylla, is that both couples are LGBT couples. I mean, which is like the most obvious. Both parties in both couples start with the letters R and S, and both parties and both couples are like so close they can't stand to be apart. I mean, however, I'll get to the hurdle where they do get separated in a little bit. I mean, as there was a hurdle that happened way before that. The first hurdle that I plan to talk about happened at the third episode in the first season, where Scylla's ex-boyfriend, Porter, resurfaces in her life and spies on her and Raelle. When Porter confronts her on why she's at Fort Salem, Scylla explains to him that she's not a terrorist, even though many of you as the audience had already suspected that she's part of the Spree. And she, I kid you not, seduces Porter and whispers a spell in his ear that ends up being the death of him. I mean, when Raelle witnesses him dying, she tries to heal him with her fixer powers, but passes out in the process. In the subsequent episode, Raelle wakes up in the infirmary and tells Anacostia that Porter very likely didn't want to die. I mean, when Raelle meets up with Scylla, she tries asking her on what she knows about what happened to Porter, suspecting that she did something wrong. I mean, only Scylla ends up dodging the question. During a Beltane festival, Raelle meets a male witch and a good friend of Porter's named Byron, and they have a conversation about love. Raelle asks him on what he would do if he were in love with someone and was under the impression that they did something wrong. I mean, Byron explains to her that she has to decide if the person is right for her, and fight for them. The morning after Beltane, after taking Byron's answer under advisement, Raelle meets up with Scylla, and the latter confesses her true feelings to the former. I mean, this causes them to reconnect, and Raelle promising Scylla to be with her no matter what. Of course, turns out the conversation she had with Byron was to borrow something from The Big Bang Theory, was a real converse sensation. In the wedding episode, Scylla had orders to deliver. In the wedding episode of Bellwether season, Scylla had orders to deliver Raelle to the Spree, but refused to do so by staying with her. As a result of the choice she's made, a swarm of blue balloons approached the wedding venue, causing the high-ranking military officers to create a windstorm to blow the balloons away. During the controlled chaos, Scylla disappears and tries to find her, but with no luck. In the subsequent episode, Raelle starts to grow restless with worry, to the point where she gets distracted during, training with Salva, a drug used for combat drops, and uses a whole lot of it, to try and find Scylla, causing the other two members of her unit, Abigail and Tally, to rescue her. Of course, we find out that Scylla has been captured by the military and is being tortured, mostly by Anacostia, for information. Scylla refused to relent until Anacostia and two other high-ranking military officers take Raelle in her sleep, to where Scylla is being held. During their emotional reunion, Scylla warns Raelle that they're going to tell her terrible things about her and begs her not to believe what they say about her. She also tells her, "I love you, Raelle, and I would never do anything to hurt you. Please believe me." Of course, Raelle believes her, without question, for the simple reason that she loves Scylla. Of course, the reunion was cut short when the other high-ranking military officers pull Raelle and Scylla apart. Of course, needless to say, neither of them were pleased to be separated again, and of course, the reason why they had a reunion was Anacostia wanted to render Scylla vulnerable in order to link with her, delve into her past. In the episode City Drop, the the cadets in training, like head to City Drop for their final training exercise. Like, while using, salva for their combat drop, Tally injures her leg, and Raelle offers to heal her. Of course, while healing her, she finds, she delves into, Tally's memories and finds out that she reported Scylla to Anacostia and therefore responsible for her disappearance. I mean, Raelle lashes out at Tally for lying to her until, Abigail comes between them. During the City Drop exercise, Raelle and Tally, argue about Scylla until Abigail tries to reason with them. Of course, when she finds out from Tally that Scylla is spree, Abigail grows furious with Raelle for bringing her to her cousin's wedding, but Raelle defends Scylla. While the other cadets were sleeping, Raelle meets a lieutenant named Helen Graves that she met while doing guard duty one night. Only the plot twist was the lieutenant doesn't know who Raelle is, doesn't know anyone named Scylla, and hasn't done guard duty in years. Despite being baffled by this, Raelle is adamant of what she believes, and she's advised to go back to where she's stationed. Of course, the next day, Helen reports to Anacostia on what happened, and they both explain to Raelle that the spree had the ability to change their appearance, and it was very likely that one of them had taken the appearance of Helen the night Raelle did guard duty. Of course, despite being baffled by this, she explains that the faux Helen Graves encouraged her to be in a relationship with Scylla, despite all the questions she had, much to the real Helen Graves' surprise and confusion. When Anacostia tells Raelle that was very likely that Raelle had that Scylla had something to do with Porter's death, Raelle grows horrified, disheartened, and betrayed by this revelation, as well as the revelation that Scylla is a spree agent who used her. Raelle even tearfully responds, "She said she loved me," but only Anacostia claims that Scylla only told her what she needed to hear. This disheartens Raelle even further because, it basically tells her Scylla never loved her at all and manipulated her to think that she did. When City Drop was almost over, the military officers get a call from their leader of the army, General Sarah Alder, into taking down 2 spree chucks that are about to distribute bombs around the world. And they had to get the cadets out of training in order to stop them. After taking down the first truck, Anacostia orders Raelle to go after the person inside it so they don't escape. And when she does so, she finds Scylla standing right in front of her. And furious about all the lies that she's been told by her, she ends up fighting her and finishes her off with her scourge. However, it's revealed that the Scylla was actually a fake because she was a weapons maker that recruited her way back in a flashback in episode 7. In the subsequent episode, Alder insists on having Scylla being put in prison, but Anacostia has doubts about it because when she linked with her, she found regret in Scylla, in which Alder seemed to ignore. When Anacostia visits Scylla, the latter tells the former that she wants to see Raelle one last time. However, Raelle was still angry with Scylla, to the point where she actually threw her under the bus, much to the shock of her unit. When Anacostia tells her that Scylla wanted to see her one last time, she responds angrily, "She's dead to me." After some persuasion from Abigail and Tally, Raelle goes to the necro facility where Scylla was still being held, and confronts her on what she found out. Scylla not only realized that, Raelle knows, believed every horrible detail about her, but knows about Helen. Scylla explains to her that she was once her mark, but ended up developing actual feelings for her. She even told Raelle that every part of the relationship was real when the reality of the relationship was questioned. Before leaving her, Raelle lashes out, asking Scylla why she was chosen out of everyone else. The latter tries to explain that she didn't call the shots, but the former interrupts her, thinking she was low-hanging fruit for her trickery. Of course, all the lies that Scylla had found out about Scylla caused her to end her relationship with her. However, Scylla blurts out, "I chose you!" She also reveals that she had orders to deliver Raelle to the spree, but refused in the name of love. Raelle, not ready to believe her or or forgive her, like walks out on her anyway, leaving Scylla bawling. Of course, the trying question now is, like, was Scylla actually telling the truth? Like, when she told... I mean, like, when I first saw the episode, I did believe she was telling the truth, but Raelle didn't seem to believe her, and who could blame her for it? I mean, after all of this, Anacostia finds Raelle crying alone next to a tree and comforts her. I mean, Raelle tells her that she still loves Scylla, and and only, like, Anacostia tells her that she's being human, and that Scylla, like, loves her, and which it was real. I mean, it was a good thing, though, because Raelle was only being human, like when she fell for Scylla, like, irrespective of who she was, and besides, feelings of love don't go away just because the relationship ended. I mean, I've yet to see what happens, like, in the second season of Motherland Fort Salem, but like between Raelle and Scylla. I mean, not to mention the fact that many YouTube commenters have cleared the air with me, like when they told me that Scylla's feelings for Raelle were real, like when I came across Motherland Fort Salem videos on YouTube. I mean, even though I've been talking about my entire backstory and coming across, like, LGBT-related romance and some media representing it, what various sexualities have in common is like love and facing hurdles, as mentioned before. I mean, I can also tell you something else about love. Like a strong belief I have of love is being selfless, as in putting others first. I mean, my point is, I can react surprised and confused by LGBT-related romance all I want. Like, if those people put their LGBT partners first, I mean, they've earned my respect. I mean, well, thank you for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, press the thumbs up button and subscribe for more videos. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I'll catch you on my next video.